Hi folks, and welcome back to Broadside Game with me, Zug. So we have an updated Hive Scum build for you today. So let's jump in and see what we are using. So we are using the Poop Knife. Our modifiers are damage, finesse, first target, critical bonus, and our dump stat is mobility, because out of the 5, mobility is the weakest stat. Perk-wise, we're going with Flak and Crit. Flak being the most prevalent armor type in the game, so it's giving you the most damage against the most targets, and Crit, because Crit scales incredibly well with the Hive Scum and also helps out in the tree where we need it. Blessings-wise, we're still using Refined Lethality and Shock and Awe, but as I've said before in the other videos, you can change these. And we'll have a quick look at what you can change them to. So, most of these abilities are actually quite good. Wrath's good. Shred if you want to pump up that crit even more. Decimator for just flat damage. Shock and Awe. Refined Lethality. Shock and Awe is really good because it allows you to cleave further. So your weapon doesn't just get stuck in the first thing you hit. You get minus 60% enemy hit mass, which means you can cleave further with each strike. Limb Splitter is kind of the weakest in this list here, but also we've got Decapitator and Relentless Strikes. I tend to stick with Shock and Awe, Refined Lethality, and Shred, occasionally using Decimator, and about it. But, you know, pick what you want. They all work. We've got a ranged option. We're using the needle pistol still. This thing is wildly overpowered, and it's definitely going to get nerfed at some point, so enjoy it while you can. Modifier wise, we're dropping mobility, but you can also drop stability. As you can see here, stability is just dealing with sway, which is negligible with this weapon. So if you don't want to drop mobility, drop stability. It is arguably far more useless on this weapon than mobility is. But as I'm poorer than a church mouse whose wife has run off with all the cheese, I'm not making another one for a while, so I'm just sticking with this, as it makes very little difference. I mean, even stopping power isn't that important because it seems to only affect the projectile damage and not the dot damage. So you have a far wider choice here. Perk-wise, we're going with Unyielding to do boss damage, because that is mostly what we're using this for. We are going to fill any monstrosity, boss, or whatever that comes across us. We are going to fill it full of needles and poison and laugh. We will laugh a lot because it will shred anything. And we're going with increased crit because why the hell not? Blessings-wise, we're using Ghost and Desperado because Blessings really don't do much on this weapon, and Ghost's kind of useful, and Desperado just gives us more crit, so yeah. Right, next up is the Curios. So, I finally got 2 Toughness Curios at 17. It's taking me bloody ages. And the third is a bit of a wild card. So we'll stick with the Toughness ones for the moment. We're going with extra toughness, combat ability generation, and damage resistance gunners on both of them, so they're twinned. And the third one, as I said, is a wild card. You can use a third toughness Curio, you can use a max health Curio, or you can use max stamina. They are all arguably good in their own way. Stamina being the most dangerous because you are already incredibly squishy, and this is going to wreck some of your defenses, but it is also going to increase your attack speed and increase your ability to dodge, duck, and dive. And when I say attack speed, I mean it's affecting a talent in the tree. The stamina doesn't affect your attack speed, so don't get confused. So stamina does that for us. Max health is going to help cushion the chip damage, which inevitably comes through from being hit, because toughness does not block all damage. Some damage will bleed through, so having one health curio can help cushion that. Or, as I said, you can go for the third toughness curio, which will just give you a big pile of toughness, but you will still have to deal with the chip damage. So it's kind of up to you there. I would say probably toughness is the most dangerous one to take because you don't get any more ability to dodge, block, or parry, and you don't have the cushion. So I would probably say health is the safest, toughness is the most dangerous, and max stamina is kind of use at your own peril. It's good, but you need to know how to use it. So, I know that was entirely unhelpful. I'd say go for max health if you're new. There you go. Perk-wise, though, as I said, toughness, combat ability, regeneration, and damage resistance gunners are generally quite good across the board. You could probably drop one of the combat ability regenerations for stamina regen, just so that your stamina starts regenning faster, but totally up to you on that. It's personal preference. Right, talents. So we're going with a Tertium Welcome for 15% melee damage on first enemy hit. Precision Violence, melee hits replenish 4% toughness, melee critical strikes replenish 8, and then weak spot critical strikes. This doesn't actually work at the moment, or it works sporadically, so be very, very warned, okay? This is entirely bugged from what I can see, and from the testing I've done, and speaking to other YouTubers. Float like a butterfly, perfect blocks and successful dodges grant 20% critical strike chance for 3 seconds. Untouchable, sprinting for 1 second grants -3 flat, blah, blah, blah. This is just funny. Or you can take moving target to gain 1 effective dodge while wielding your ranged weapon. So pick whatever you want. This does actually work, and it is funny watching packs of rages just ignore you and go after someone else. But moving target's probably the better choice. This just makes me laugh. Toughness boost into Chem Grenade. Down into Gang Tough for 10% range damage, 10% toughness damage reduction. Slippery Customer, while sliding gain melee attack immunity. Nimble, dodges are extended by 25% and time considered dodging by 50%. Jittery, plus 40% dodge recovery speed while stamina is above 75%. Anarchist, plus 5% critical strike chance for you and your allies' incoherency. Then into a toughness boost, and then we're taking Rampage. Replenish your toughness and enter Rampage for 10 seconds for the duration. Gain 50% melee power, 20% melee attack speed, and 25% damage reduction, as well as becoming stun and suppression immune. Melee strikes extend the duration by 0.3 seconds, and after 20 seconds, the extending becomes diminished. Upon exiting Rampage, lose all stamina and become exhausted for 7 seconds, gaining 25% damage taken and 75% stamina regeneration speed for the duration. With the amount of combat ability regeneration and also in the stim lab, the debuff isn't going to affect as much. The debuff is basically negligible. We're also taking pulverizing strikes. 50% cleaver Rampage is active. Additionally, gain 2.5% melee power for every second spent in the ability active up to 10 times. Forge's Bellow, when Rampage is activated, unleash a powerful shout that staggers enemies and increases time between the hacks by 50%. Now, you don't have to take this talent, but I find it incredibly useful, especially if you are about to be swarmed by rages. It gives you just that split second to knock them back and do horrible, horrible things to them. Keep forgetting I don't have to go through the escape menu anymore. And then we've got Boiling Blood. Melee strikes against elites and monstrosities extend the duration of Rampage by 1 second. Additionally, the time before extending becomes diminished is now 30 seconds. Now, we're going over here on the left instead of the right now for a 5% critical chance boost, and then we're going into Swift Endurance for plus 2% increased melee attack speed for each current stamina. This is the talent I'm talking about, the stamina. So it's going to slightly increase our attack speed, which is always nice. And then we're going down into Hypercritical, which apparently doesn't work very well either. It sometimes works really well, and then sometimes just doesn't work at all. This is quite a bugged talent. Critical strikes instantly kill human-sized enemies if their current health is less than 2 times the amount of damage of the critical strike. And then we've got the sweet spot for a flat 25% weak spot damage, which is always pretty damn good. Then we're taking plus 10% melee damage. We're grabbing Battering Strikes for melee kills, grant 10% melee cleave for 5 seconds, stacking 5 times. Into Burst of Energy. Gain stun immunity for 6 seconds and restore 50% toughness when toughness is broken. Tis But a Scratch replenishes 30% toughness over 3 seconds after taking ranged toughness damage. Losing all toughness cancels the effect. Toughness, toughness, toughness. Again, this ability can be dumped if you really, really, really want to, but this is actually very, very useful to help with that chip damage, which we will inevitably take when closing the distances between groups. So it may not seem like a huge amount, but over the course of an entire match, this will do a lot more work than you think it does. Punching above one's weight, plus 15% damage against elites and monstrosities. Hyperviolence is another talent that apparently doesn't work very well at all, if at all. Kills grant plus 25% of the difference between the damage dealt by your attack and the health of the killed enemy as melee damage for 1 second. And then we're taking Hive City Brawler up to 20% damage reduction depending on available stamina. Additionally, up to 20% melee damage depending on stamina spent. Again, this is a talent that synergizes really well with a stamina curio. So again, more reason why it kind of makes sense to maybe take one when you're feeling a bit more confident. And then we're taking Adrenaline Frenzy. We were originally taking Chemical Dependency, but crunching the numbers, Adrenaline Frenzy actually does make quite a lot of sense. It's a very passive ability. You don't have to mess around timing your stims. It's literally active the entire time. I would highly suggest, though, not taking these 3 tertiary talents because all they're doing is kneecapping you. They're literally just making adrenaline worse. That's all they're doing. So I would not suggest taking them. So what does adrenaline do? Melee hits grant you a stack of adrenaline. Critical melee hits. Sorry, yawning. It's like 3 in the morning. I'm recording this. Critical melee hits grant plus 1 additional stack. Not gaining a stack within 2 seconds will remove a stack instead. At 30 stacks, remove all stacks of adrenaline and gain Adrenaline Frenzy. Adrenaline Frenzy grants 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage lasting 10 seconds. This synergizes incredibly well with Rampage. You become an absolute powerhouse. And then we're taking these 2. Increase the duration of Adrenaline Frenzy to 20 seconds, and while Adrenaline Frenzy is active, you replenish 5% toughness each second. But like I said, do not take these 3. All they do is make Adrenaline Frenzy much, much worse. And this build plays incredibly simply. You literally just murder everything you can, building up adrenaline stacks. And with that weak spot talent, it's also helping us stack them up incredibly quickly. And the amount of crit we're taking, we're also stacking up even more because you get more stacks on crits and weak spot hits and all that stuff. So let's take a look at the stim, as we only looked at it very, very briefly. We're taking 3 in Calm. We're going the entire row for Wildfire, for Strength, 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 Rending, Strength and Rending. And then we're taking a couple in Barrage for Toughness, Regeneration. I mean, we can drop these to get the cooldown a little bit lower. Maybe take 1 there, 1 there. That would probably be a bit better. So it's a minute almost exactly. But this thing can be fiddled about as much as you want. If you want an incredibly quick one, I mean, you can dump out loads more. You could dump out these top end ones here that cost 4 and 5, and this would dump it down like 42 seconds, but you are losing quite a lot of damage doing that. So I would suggest something like this, but it's personal preference again. And like I've said in other videos, I do highly suggest you change your stim hotkey to something a little bit easier to reach. Mine is on V. So C is my tag, V is my stim. They're quite easy just to slam when you need them. But with this build, you do not have to take the poop knife or bone saw if you really don't want to. You can take anything you like. For example, you could take the crowbar. The crowbar is actually way better than I thought it would be. It's a very uninspired weapon, but it works pretty damn well. Especially with the fact that It is a bludgeoning weapon with a massive arc on it, but it is also a precise weapon. It is slightly more difficult to use than the poop knife, just because you have to switch its style quite rapidly while fighting. But it is a very good weapon to cleave your way through hordes, and the damage isn't too shabby. All you miss out on, though, is that Tox dot, which, you know, it isn't the end of the world for not having it, but you might like that more than you like the crowbar. But like I said, you can pick whatever the hell you want. I'm slowly warming to the shivs. I am still leveling them up, but they're not as awful as I initially thought either. I just need some more time with them, I think, and to bond. But there you go, folks. That is the updated Rampage build. We're now going straight down to Adrenaline Frenzy instead of going over to Chemical Dependency. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have, please do like and subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. It really does help us out, and I shall see you all for the next video. So until then, take it easy, and I'll see you later.